Hello, I'm Jim Forstner, the CEO of Emory Hillendale, Emory Decatur, and Emory Long-Term Acute Care Hospitals. I want to thank House of Hope and Pastor Sharice Cross for allowing us to bring this important health information to you through the Hope TV platform. As we continue to be challenged by COVID-19, it is incredibly comforting to know that ministries like House of Hope are supporting our community. I encourage you to keep your guard up by wearing masks, practicing hand hygiene, and avoiding large gatherings until such time as you and those around you are able to receive the vaccine. To learn more about the vaccine, I invite you to visit our website at www.emoryhealthcare.org/covid-vaccines-faq.html. You can also find that right off our emoryhealthcare.org homepage. On behalf of our physicians and all of our staff, I want to thank you for doing your part to stop the spread of COVID-19.
Hello, and welcome to Hope TV. I'm Kawanda Green, and this is Surviving and Thriving in a Pandemic. Thank you so much for joining us. For the past 13 months, it seems that we've only been focusing on coronavirus. But did you know that heart disease is the leading cause of death for people in the United States? Approximately 655,000 Americans die from it each year. 1 in every 3 adults in the U.S. have high blood pressure. Today, we will have a cardiologist from Emory Healthcare here to help us understand heart disease and high blood pressure. Dr. Cornelius Flowers, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here to help you guys out.
Yeah, how are you today?
Good.
And what made you go into that field?
Well, actually, I've been a cardiologist for about 40 years. I finished my training at Emory in 1981. And I went in that field because basically I grew up in rural Mississippi where there was no health care. And really, I never knew anything about preventive medicine and preventive health. I never went to a doctor till I was in college, except for when I was acutely ill with something, with a cold or something that my parents couldn't handle at home. So, I figured there must have been a better way. When I grew up, I didn't know a black doctor. I didn't know that a black doctor existed. The only doctor I saw was the one in my town who was obviously white. And I saw people of color in a different room. It was funny because I would go to the doctor, I would never see a white person in the same waiting room as I. And I noticed that we would enter a different door and leave out a different door. And I never knew what was on the other side. And one day I decided, well, there must be something over there and I'm going to find out what it is. And so I said, the best way to do it is to go and be a doctor and figure out this thing myself. And that's what encouraged me, because I saw so many times that people of color was not treated appropriately. And now I figured out, looking back, that the people of color was brought into the exam room by the doctor when there was a break between treating the whites on the other side. So we got squeezed in between the vacant space. And actually, I had a very interesting experience when I was, after I received my MD, that I went back home in Mississippi. And I went to the dentist, and I made an appointment. And so I went there and I went in this door. By the way, it was on the back side of the building. And I sit in this little room that probably about maybe 5 feet. You can hold about 2 chairs or 3 chairs. And I sat there and I waited and finally they called me in. And then when I saw the dentist, he said, "What's wrong?" So I said, "I think I might have a cavity." And when I said that word, he almost fell out of his chair, because he wonder what did this, black little kid know about a cavity. And because what he used to hearing is some other terminology that I won't speak of here. But anyway, uh, he asked me, "What do you do?" I played with him a little bit, and I said, "I just finished school." And he said, "Where?" And so I just gave him a little background. So I went to Columbia University in New York, and I finished my resident training at Emory and the fellowship in Emory. Now I'm a cardiologist, and so he went ahead and did my little examination. And when he finished, he let me go out the front door. In fact, he escorted me out the front door and explained to everybody as we walking out together, "Hi, this is Dr. Flowers." And I imagine I was the first black doctor, first black person that walked out of his front door. So I say, I got to make a difference. This can't happen. This world is not like this. So that's me. I'm a doctor. That's me, the little country guy.
What year was that?
Oh, that was 1981.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yes.
Wow. No, I'm saying because you were saying that, they were still going out the back door in 81. That's why that surprised me.
Well, in 81, you could not use public facility. You could not drink out of the fountain. When you went into town, your parents told you, make sure you urinate and drink water before you leave home, because it will be none of that being done once you get into town, get into public places.
Wow. Wow, Dr. Flowers. That is an incredible story. I'd love to talk to you more about that. But we're gonna get into our topic of high blood pressure. But that is an incredible story. I'm still stuck on it was still happening in 1981. I'm from Atlanta, so it was
big city.
a little right. Wow. Well, let's talk about high blood pressure. What exactly is high blood pressure?
Well, high blood pressure is elevation of the pressure that's inside of your heart and artery. In order for the blood to flow through the system, it has to have a pressure that drives it. And that's the blood pressure. You got the top number, which is the systolic number, and there's the bottom number, which is the diastolic number. And when your heart pump blood, that 1 second, that instant there, that's the top number. You're measuring what the pressure being put in your arteries when your heart pumped the blood out. And then the diastolic would be you measuring the pressure in your artery when your heart is not pumping blood. And basically, hypertension is a pressure that is elevated beyond what is considered a normal blood pressure. Now, we have not yet decided what's a normal blood pressure. I know the World Health Organization came out 30 or 40 years ago, giving us that magic number of 140/90 that people always talks about. Now we talk about different guidelines. There is a national guideline that look at a blood pressure every, say, 5 years and decide what's the best blood pressure based outcome. So the bottom line is, if you have a blood pressure at a certain level and you are still having strokes, heart attacks, and heart failure, then that's not an optimal blood pressure. You need to try to get a blood pressure down to a level where you have the same rate of heart attacks, strokes, kidney failure as a person who have what we consider a normal blood pressure. And so what we have done is we have divided high blood pressure into different stages of blood pressure, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. And then we'll look at things like diabetes. If you have diabetes, your blood pressure need to be lower than a person who don't have diabetes. The most recent recommendation a year or two ago suggests that your blood pressure should be 120/70 as normal. And then when your blood pressure is like 130, 135 systolic, you have hypertension. You have the first stage of hypertension. Now, that don't mean that you'll go and give them a medication at a blood pressure 135. What that does mean is that you need to start lifestyle modification. And that's the thing that Dr. Barber was talking about earlier. What we need to start worrying about salt intake, start looking at exercise, start looking at stress, mental stress, physical stress, diet, weight, exercise, lower blood pressure, and so does diet and reducing salt. And those are some of the things we can do early on before we get into giving someone a pill to treat their blood pressure. But unfortunately, most of my patients, when they present with hypertension, and I'm quite sure this is true in most African American community, they already have stage 2 or 3 hypertension with a blood pressure not 130. It may be 180 or 200. And so we, even though we do tell them they need to exercise, lose weight, reduce sodium intake, and try to modify behavior and stress, they are put on a couple of pills. And usually about 2 pills is the average, at least about 2 pills. And patient asks, why are you giving me these pills? The reason we give you these pills to treat your blood pressure is to reduce your outcome, your what we call reduce strokes, reduce heart attacks, reduce kidney failure. Those are the biggest one in the African American community. And it's pumping blood through your head. And if you raise your pressure in that vessel too high, that vessel will become damaged, and eventually, sometime it may rupture. And that's what we call the hemorrhagic stroke. Now, we have come a long way from when I first started my practice. I started out at my internship at Grady Hospital, Grady Memorial Hospital in 1976. And what we used to see then was what we call hemorrhagic strokes. And that is people pressure be so high that the vessel in their head sometimes will actually rupture and they'll bleed. And they will come in with a bleeding in the brain. And of course, the morbidity and mortality was high. And now what we're seeing, rarely do we ever see a hemorrhagic stroke now. We mostly see thrombotic stroke. And that's a stroke that comes from a chronic elevation of blood pressure over years, 10, 20, 30 years of elevated blood pressure that damage the inside of the arteries. And what happened is you get a buildup of what we call plaque and arteriosclerosis. In other words, cholesterol deposited, it damaged the vessel, and the vessel itself loses the ability to dilate and expand. And that's what happened between the systolic and diastolic pressure. When your heart pushed the blood out, your blood vessel needs to be able to dilate to accommodate the extra volume of blood to get pushed out of the heart. With some hypertensive, you have decrease in resistance. In other words, that vessel does not have compliance anymore and it doesn't dilate. And so when the heart pushes the blood out, the pressure is much higher because the vessel is not dilating to accommodate the blood. And that's a damaged vessel. That's something seen very early in hypertension, that if you did a study, a catheterization, you wouldn't see anything there. You would say it's normal, but it would not be normal. It did not respond adequate to dilatation and constricting. And then, of course, we can't forget about the kidneys. This high pressure on the kidney had the same effect as the damage of the vessel of the kidney, just like damage the vessel of the artery in the head. And of course, you know, dialysis units are growing. If you ask me if I want to invest, if dialysis unit were on the stock market, you ask me what I want to invest in, I will invest in dialysis unit because they are growing Every year there are new units popping up all over the place. And of course, there's peritoneal dialysis, there's hemodialysis, and now some people are doing dialysis at home. The biggest dialysis units, you cannot go anywhere in any city and not see a dialysis unit. They're all over the place. The other one that we talk about is the heart disease. You just mentioned 655,000 people dying every year. That high pressure on the heart, think about it. I always tell people, think about if you had a guy who was lifting weight. He lifted weight, get those big old muscles, those big thick muscles. That is not a good thing. The heart develops a big thick muscle when pressure is high. It has to push that blood out through a elevated pressure, which is like lifting weights, a higher pressure. So the muscle of the heart thickens. Now, as the muscle of the heart thickens, the demands on the heart increase. The arteries that supply blood to the heart do not get bigger. I say, I'm giving you this pill to give you a salt Reese's, to get rid of salt, not to get rid of the water, because salt follows water. I say it's like the horse and the rider. Consider the salt, the rider, and the horse, the water. Mm-hmm. You cannot win the race without the rider on the horse. So you get rid of the horse. If the rider's on the horse, the rider is out the door too. So we're getting rid of both together. But the real damage is caused by the salt, not the water, because your body will regulate the amount of fluid balance and salt balance in it. You go to the movie, eat some popcorn, guess what happened? You get thirsty. Why? You have loaded your body with sodium, and that salt says, hey guys, I need some water to go with this. So you go out and buy a Coca-Cola, which has not only water, but it has the other stuff, all that carbohydrate and all that fructose syrup. So you're really killing yourself right there. The movie theater probably killed more people than you would think. You go in and buy your popcorn, you put the butter on it, and that's gonna run your cholesterol up, and you got salt on there, and you got your Coca-Cola, you got that fructose syrup, all the sugar, and you eat the popcorn, you get thirsty, you drink the soda, and you want some more popcorn, and you eat the butter, so it's a vicious cycle. So that stuff run the pressure up. It makes the artery don't dilate like they're supposed to be. Your artery are not very compliant, so they won't dilate and come down when your heart not pumping. When your heart pumping, it's supposed to dilate to allow the blood to go out there. And when your heart between the beat is supposed to relax. If it doesn't do that, when it pushes that blood out there, the pressure will rise. It'll be high. And you put that blood pressure cup on your arm, your pressure will be high. Now, too much salt, too much stress, lack of exercise, sedentary people have more hypertension. If you walk 30 minutes, 4 days a week, you can lower your blood pressure. What lowering blood pressure, you lower it by changing the resistance in your blood vessels. You decrease the resistance in your blood pressure. You increase the compliance by exercising 30 minutes, 4 days a week. And it also does something else. If you exercise or walk 30 minutes, 4 days a week, it relaxes you. You're not as stressed. It unwinds you. The story I hear my patients say, I drink this glass of wine every evening because I have to unwind myself from the day's work. They're all stressed out from the day's work where their head is bursting and all that stress at work. And now you come home and drink a glass of wine. Why don't you go and walk for 30 minutes? You drink a glass of wine, it may unwind you some, but you're also causing some extra problem with the extra wine. It can cause extra fat deposit in the abdomen. That can cause another problem. You can get fat deposit in the liver. That can cause another problem. So things like that, stress, too much salt, and a lot of high blood pressure is hereditary, if you will. If your grandfather had it, grandmother have it, than a lot of you will have it. Most